Have you ever kept a secret so deep that it felt like carrying a boulder on your chest every single day? A secret so personal that even the people closest to you had no idea what was brewing inside your heart? Well, that was me for almost 40 years of my life. And the strangest part? The person who finally helped me break free from that prison wasn't a therapist, wasn't a friend, wasn't even someone I'd known my whole life. It was the woman I least expected to understand. But before I tell you about her, let me take you back to where it all started. Back to a time when I was just a curious kid trying to make sense of feelings I didn't have words for. My name is Michael, but these days, some people call me Michelle.
And this is my story.
I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and secrets don't stay buried for long. My childhood home was this old Victorian house with creaky wooden floors and a musty attic that smelled like mothballs and forgotten memories. I was the only boy in a family with 4 older sisters: Jennifer, Rebecca, Amanda, and Sarah. They were loud, confident, and always seemed to know exactly who they were.
Me?
I was the quiet one, always observing, always wondering. Being surrounded by sisters meant I grew up in a very feminine household. There were makeup brushes scattered on bathroom counters, hairdryers humming every morning, and closets bursting with dresses, skirts, and all sorts of colorful clothes I found myself strangely drawn to. My father worked long hours as a truck driver, so he was rarely home. That left me in a house dominated by women, and honestly, I didn't mind one bit. I must have been around 7 years old when I first felt that pull. It was a Saturday afternoon, and my sisters were getting ready for a family wedding. The house was chaos. Hair curlers, perfume bottles, and jewelry were everywhere. I remember sitting on the edge of Jennifer's bed, watching her apply mascara with the precision of an artist. She caught me staring in the mirror. "What are you looking at, Squirt?" she asked, smiling. "Nothing," I mumbled, feeling my cheeks burn. But it wasn't nothing. I was fascinated. Not just by what she was doing, but by the transformation itself. She went from my regular sister to someone who looked like she belonged in a magazine. There was something magical about it, something I couldn't quite put into words. Later that evening, after everyone had left for the wedding, I found myself alone in the house. Mom had trusted me to stay back because I'd complained of a stomachache. Truth was, I just didn't want to go. But now, standing in that quiet house, I felt a pull I couldn't resist. I walked into Jennifer's room and opened her closet. Rows of dresses hung there like colorful curtains, and I reached out to touch the fabric of a pink sundress. It was soft, almost silky, and I wondered what it would feel like to wear it. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What if someone came home early? What if they caught me? But the curiosity was stronger than the fear. I pulled the dress off the hanger and held it against my small body. In the mirror, I could almost see a different version of myself. A version that felt right in a way I couldn't explain. I didn't put it on that day. The fear was too strong. But that moment planted a seed in my mind that would grow quietly over the years, hidden beneath layers of what I thought I was supposed to be. As I got older, those feelings didn't go away. If anything, they got stronger. By the time I was 13, our family had converted the attic into a storage space. My bedroom was moved up there, and I suddenly had more privacy than I'd ever had before. The attic wasn't just my room. It was also where my mother stored boxes and boxes of old clothes from the 1950s and 60s. Vintage dresses, skirts with petticoats, old-fashioned girdles with garter straps, and bras with intricate stitching. It was like having a secret wardrobe from another era right above my head. At night, when the house was silent and I was sure everyone was asleep, I would carefully open those boxes. I'd hold up a dress to the dim attic light, imagining what it would be like to wear it. Eventually, curiosity won over fear. I started trying things on. At first, it was just for a few minutes. I'd slip into a dress, look at myself in the small cracked mirror leaning against the wall, and then quickly change back. But those few minutes turned into hours. I'd walk around the attic, feeling the swish of fabric against my legs, the tightness of a girdle around my waist, the strange but comforting sensation of being someone else. Or maybe, being more myself than I'd ever been. I didn't understand what it meant. Was I supposed to feel this way? Was something wrong with me? I had no one to talk to about it. The internet wasn't what it is today. There were no communities, no resources, no one sharing their stories. I felt completely alone, trapped between who I was expected to be and who I felt like inside. High school came and went. I buried those feelings as deep as I could, throwing myself into sports and trying to be the guy everyone expected. I dated girls, went to parties, acted like everything was normal. But at night, alone in that attic, I'd still open those boxes. It was my escape, my secret world where I could just be. College was supposed to be a fresh start. I moved 3 hours away, shared a dorm room with a guy named Travis who was obsessed with video games and barely noticed I existed. I thought maybe the distance from home, from that attic, would make the feelings go away. But it didn't work like that. If anything, not having that outlet made everything harder. I felt restless, incomplete, like a part of me was missing. I graduated with a degree in accounting and got a job at a mid-sized firm back in my hometown. It was stable, boring, and exactly what my parents wanted for me. A few years later, I met a woman named Catherine at a company event. She was smart, funny, and we clicked right away. We dated for 2 years before getting married. I thought maybe this was it. Maybe being with someone, building a life together, would finally make me feel whole. But marriage didn't erase who I was. Catherine and I settled into a routine. We bought a small house, talked about having kids someday, and on the surface, everything looked perfect. But inside, I was still carrying that secret. And it was getting heavier. I started finding small moments to indulge those feelings again. When Catherine was at work, I'd try on her clothes. I'd stand in front of the bathroom mirror, the door locked, with a pair of her heels on and one of her dresses pulled over my head. I'd use rolled-up socks to fill out the bra, and for those few stolen minutes, I'd feel a sense of peace I couldn't find anywhere else. But then the guilt would crash over me like a wave. What was I doing? What kind of husband was I? Catherine never knew. Or, at least, I thought she didn't. Looking back now, I wonder if she sensed something was off. There were nights when she'd look at me with a question in her eyes, like she wanted to ask something but didn't know how. I'd just smile and change the subject, and the moment would pass. Our marriage lasted 8 years before she got sick. Cancer. It came out of nowhere, aggressive and merciless. I watched the woman I loved waste away over the course of a year, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. When she passed, I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Not just because I'd lost her, but because I'd never been fully honest with her. She died not knowing the whole truth about who I was, and that guilt ate at me every single day. After Catherine's funeral, I moved into a small apartment across town. I couldn't stay in our house. Everything there reminded me of her, of the life we'd built, and of the secrets I'd kept. The apartment was just 1 bedroom, nothing fancy, but it was mine. And for the first time in my life, I was completely alone. No parents, no sisters, no wife. Just me. That's when things started to change. Without anyone watching, without anyone to hide from, I started exploring those feelings I'd suppressed for so long. I bought my first dress online. It was simple, nothing too fancy, just a navy blue dress that looked like something you'd wear to an office. When it arrived, I remember my hands shaking as I opened the package. I tried it on in front of my bedroom mirror, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilt. I felt relief. I felt like I could finally breathe. Over the next year, I bought more clothes. Dresses, skirts, blouses, even a wig. I'd come home from work, change into something feminine, and just exist in my apartment as Michelle. I wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't brave enough for that. But just being able to express that side of myself, even in private, made a huge difference. I felt lighter, less burdened. For the first time in decades, I felt like I was starting to understand myself. But isolation has its limits. As freeing as it was to dress at home, there was still a loneliness that came with keeping it all hidden. I wasn't part of any community. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I was still living a double life, just in a different way. Then I met Eleanor. I wasn't looking for a relationship. Honestly, I didn't think I'd ever be ready for one again after losing Catherine. But life has a funny way of surprising you. I met Eleanor at a charity event my company was sponsoring. She was volunteering, organizing donations, and directing people with the confidence of someone who'd done it 100 times before. She had this warm energy about her, the kind that made you feel comfortable right away. We started talking, and before I knew it, hours had passed. We exchanged numbers, and over the next few months, we kept in touch. Coffee dates turned into dinners. Dinners turned into long walks in the park. Eleanor was different from anyone I'd ever met. She was kind, patient, and had this way of really listening when you talked. She didn't just hear your words. She heard what you weren't saying. About 6 months into our relationship, she brought up the idea of moving in together. I hesitated. Not because I didn't care about her, but because I knew that living together meant less privacy. It meant fewer opportunities to be Michelle. But I also didn't want to lose her. So I agreed, and we found a small house just outside of town. It was cozy, with a little garden out back and big windows that let in lots of light. It felt like a place where we could build something real. For a while, things were great. We fell into a comfortable rhythm. But that secret I'd been carrying? It was still there, lurking in the background. And I knew that eventually, I'd have to deal with it. The turning point came on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Eleanor and I were cleaning out the garage, sorting through boxes I'd brought from my old apartment. Most of it was junk, things I should have thrown away years ago. But then Eleanor opened a box I'd forgotten about. Inside were some of the clothes I'd bought during my year of living alone. A dress, a pair of heels, a wig. She pulled out the dress and looked at it, confused. "Michael, what's this?" My heart stopped. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but no words came out. She wasn't angry. She just looked genuinely curious, maybe a little concerned. "Is this yours?" she asked gently. I could have lied. I could have said it was Catherine's, that I'd forgotten to donate it. But something in her eyes told me this was the moment. This was my chance to finally be honest with someone. So I took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes," I said quietly. "It's mine." Eleanor looked at the dress, then back at me. She didn't say anything for a long moment, and I braced myself for rejection, for disgust, for her to walk out the door. But instead, she sat down on an old crate and patted the spot next to her. "Tell me about it," she said softly. And I did. I told her everything. About the attic, about my mother's old clothes, about the years of hiding and guilt and confusion. I told her about Catherine, about the stolen moments in the bathroom, about the year I'd spent alone trying to figure out who I was. I told her things I'd never said out loud to anyone, and the whole time, she just listened. She didn't interrupt, didn't judge, didn't pull away. She just sat there, holding my hand, letting me pour out decades of secrets. When I finally finished, I felt exhausted but also strangely light, like I'd been holding my breath for 40 years and could finally exhale. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, processing everything I'd said. Then she squeezed my hand. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "I know that couldn't have been easy." "You're not upset?" I asked, barely able to believe it. She shook her head. "Michael, I love you. And if this is part of who you are, then I want to understand it. I want to support you." I felt tears prick at my eyes. I'd spent so long expecting rejection that I didn't know how to handle acceptance. "Really?" "Really," she said, smiling. "But I have one condition." My stomach tightened. "What's that?" She stood up and held out the dress. "You let me help you. If you're going to do this, let's do it right." I stared at her, not quite believing what I was hearing. You want to help me?" "Of course," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "You've been doing this alone for so long. You don't have to anymore." That night, Eleanor and I sat down and talked for hours. She asked me questions, not in a judgmental way, but because she genuinely wanted to understand. What did dressing up mean to me? How did it make me feel? What did I need from her? And I answered as honestly as I could, even when the words were hard to find. Over the next few weeks, Eleanor became my biggest supporter. She helped me pick out clothes that actually fit, showed me how to do basic makeup, and even helped me choose a wig that looked more natural than the cheap one I'd been using. She treated it like a project we were working on together, and her enthusiasm made me feel less like I was doing something shameful and more like I was discovering a part of myself I'd kept hidden for too long. One evening, she suggested we do a full makeover. "Let's really do this," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Let's turn you into Michelle properly." I was nervous but also thrilled. We set up in the bedroom, and Eleanor went to work. She helped me into a dress she'd picked out, a beautiful emerald green one that hugged my figure in a way I'd never experienced before. She did my makeup carefully, explaining each step as she went. Foundation, concealer, eyeshadow, eyeliner, mascara, blush, lipstick. She styled the wig, adjusted it until it sat perfectly, and then stepped back to admire her work. "Go look," she said, grinning. I walked over to the full-length mirror, and what I saw took my breath away. For the first time in my life, I didn't just see Michael trying to be someone else. I saw Michelle. I saw a version of myself that felt real and whole and right. Tears started streaming down my face, and Eleanor came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "You're beautiful," she whispered. And for the first time, I believed it. We started taking pictures, lots of them. Eleanor treated it like a professional photo shoot, directing me to pose this way or that, laughing when I got self-conscious, encouraging me to relax and just enjoy the moment. We must have taken over 100 photos that night, and looking through them later, I felt something I hadn't felt in years.
Joy.
Pure, uncomplicated joy. But as amazing as that night was, I still wasn't ready to go public. The idea of stepping outside, as Michelle, terrified me. What if people stared? What if they laughed? What if someone I knew saw me? Eleanor was patient, never pushing, but I could tell she thought I was ready for more. Then one day, she came home with 2 tickets to a concert. "I got us tickets to see that band you like," she said casually. "The show's next Saturday." "That's awesome," I said. "Thanks." She smiled, but there was something mischievous in her eyes. "There's just one thing. I think you should go as Michelle." My heart skipped a beat.
What? No.
"I can't." "What if someone—" "Michael," she interrupted gently. "You can't hide forever. And, honestly, I don't think you want to. You've been so much happier these past few months. Don't you want to see what it's like to be yourself outside these 4 walls?" She was right, and I knew it. But knowing it and doing it were 2 very different things. The next week was a blur of anxiety and anticipation. Part of me wanted to back out, to make up some excuse. But another part of me, the part that had been quiet for so long, was ready. It was time. Saturday came faster than I expected. Eleanor helped me get ready, and this time, I felt a little more confident. The makeup went on smoother, the wig felt more natural, and the outfit she'd helped me pick out, a simple black dress with a cardigan, felt comfortable and right. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see someone playing dress up. I saw Michelle. We drove to the venue, and with every mile, my anxiety grew. What if this was a mistake? What if I couldn't do it? But Eleanor kept glancing over at me, smiling, squeezing my hand, and somehow that made it okay. When we pulled into the parking lot, I took a deep breath. "You ready?" she asked. "I think so," I said, my voice shaking. "You've got this," she said firmly. "And I'm right here with you." We got out of the car, and I felt the cool evening air on my skin. People were walking toward the entrance, chatting and laughing, and no one gave me a second glance. We walked through the crowd, and I kept waiting for someone to point, to stare, to say something. But no one did. I was just another person going to a concert. Inside the venue, the music was loud, the lights were flashing, and the energy was incredible. Eleanor and I found a spot near the stage, and as the band started playing, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't thinking about how I looked or what people might think. I was just there in the moment, enjoying the music with the person I loved. And I was doing it as Michelle. At one point, Eleanor leaned over and shouted over the music, "How do you feel?" I thought about it for a second, then smiled. Free.
And I meant it.
For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. That concert was a turning point. It proved to me that I could exist in the world as Michelle and the sky wouldn't fall. People wouldn't attack me. I could just be. After that night, Eleanor and I started making plans for more outings. Maybe a quiet dinner at a restaurant the next town over. Maybe a walk in the park. Small steps, but steps forward. Looking back now, I realize how lucky I am. Not everyone gets the kind of support Eleanor gave me. Not everyone finds someone who sees them, really sees them, and loves them anyway. She didn't just accept me.
She celebrated me.
She made me feel like being Michelle wasn't something to hide or be ashamed of. It was something to embrace. We've been together for 3 years now, and life isn't perfect, but it's mine. I still go to work as Michael. I still navigate a world that doesn't always understand. But when I come home, I get to be myself. And on weekends, Eleanor and I go out, sometimes as Michael and Eleanor, sometimes as Michelle and Eleanor. And honestly, both feel right because both are me. There are still hard days. Days when the weight of living in two worlds feels heavy. Days when I wonder if I'll ever be able to fully integrate both parts of myself. But then Eleanor will say something encouraging, or I'll catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror and see Michelle looking back, and I remember how far I've come. I think about that scared 7-year-old boy standing in his sister's room, holding a pink dress and wondering what it meant. I think about the lonely teenager in the attic, trying on his mother's old clothes and feeling like he was the only person in the world who felt that way. I think about the man who hid for decades, too afraid to be seen. And I think about the moment I finally told Eleanor the truth, the moment everything changed. If I could go back and talk to that scared kid, I'd tell him it's going to be okay. I'd tell him that one day he'll find someone who loves him, all of him, and that he won't have to hide anymore. I'd tell him that the feelings he has aren't wrong or shameful. They're just part of who he is. And that's enough. Because here's the thing I've learned. Being yourself is the hardest and the most important thing you'll ever do. It takes courage to look in the mirror and accept what you see, especially when what you see doesn't match what the world expects. But that courage? It's worth it. Because living authentically, even if it's messy and complicated and scary, is so much better than living a lie. Eleanor didn't just make me dress up. She gave me permission to be myself. She gave me the gift of acceptance, and in doing so, she set me free. And now, when I put on a dress or do my makeup or step outside as Michelle, I'm not doing it because I have to. I'm doing it because I want to, because it's part of who I am. And for the first time in my life, that feels like enough. So yes, she made me dress up. And I had no choice. But not because she forced me. Because she showed me that I didn't have to choose between being Michael and being Michelle. I could be both. I could be whole. And that's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe one day I'll be brave enough to live as Michelle full-time. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll keep navigating both worlds, finding balance as I go. But whatever happens, I know I won't be doing it alone. Eleanor will be there, cheering me on, supporting me, loving me. And that makes all the difference. Life is strange and unpredictable. You never know when the person who will change everything will walk into your life. For me, that person was Eleanor. She saw me at my most vulnerable and my most honest, and she didn't run. She stayed. She helped.
She loved.
And because of her, I'm finally learning to love myself too. If you're reading this and you're struggling with your own secret, whatever it might be, I want you to know something. You're not alone. There are people out there who will understand, who will support you, who will love you for exactly who you are. It might take time to find them. It might take courage to let them in. But they're out there. And when you do find them, hold on tight. Because those are the people who will change your life. For 40 years, I carried a secret that felt too heavy to share. And then one rainy afternoon, I shared it. And everything changed. Not because the secret went away, but because I finally had someone to share the weight with. Someone who looked at me and said, "This is who you are, and that's beautiful." So here I am, Michael and Michelle, learning to navigate a world that doesn't always make space for people like me. But I'm doing it with someone by my side who believes in me, who sees me, who loves me. And that makes all the difference. Eleanor made me dress up. She helped me become the person I'd been hiding for decades. She gave me the courage to step outside, to be seen, to exist fully. And for that, I will be forever grateful. Because sometimes the person you least expect becomes the person you need most. Sometimes love means seeing someone's truth and not just accepting it, but celebrating it. Sometimes freedom comes not from hiding who you are, but from finally having the courage to show the world. And sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you to change everything. That's my story. That's how I went from a scared kid in an attic to a man who can finally look in the mirror and see himself clearly. It wasn't easy. It took decades. But it was worth it. If there's one thing I hope you take away from this, it's this. Don't wait 40 years to be yourself. Don't spend your life hiding, afraid of what people might think. Find your people. Find your Eleanor. And when you do, let them in. Let them see you. Let them love you. Because life is too short to spend it pretending to be someone you're not. And the world needs more people who are brave enough to be themselves, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. So thank you, Eleanor, for seeing me.
For loving me.
For making me dress up and showing me that I didn't have to hide anymore. You changed my life in ways I never thought possible. And I can't wait to see where this journey takes us next. Because this isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning. And for the first time in my life, I'm excited to see what comes next. Not as Michael pretending to be someone else. Not as Michelle hiding from the world. But as both fully integrated, fully myself. And that, more than anything, feels like coming home. The months that followed that concert were some of the best of my life. Eleanor and I developed this beautiful rhythm where weekends became our time to explore. Not just physically going places, but exploring who I was becoming, who we were becoming together. It's funny how one person's acceptance can unlock parts of yourself you didn't even know existed. But let me be honest with you. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. There were moments of doubt, moments of fear, moments when I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. And there were definitely moments when the outside world reminded me that not everyone was going to be as understanding as Eleanor. It was about 4 months after that first concert when we decided to venture out for dinner. Not just any dinner, but a proper sit-down meal at a restaurant. Eleanor had found this little Italian place 2 towns over, far enough that we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew, but close enough that it didn't feel like we were running away. She made reservations for a Saturday night, and as the day approached, I felt that familiar cocktail of excitement and terror. The afternoon before dinner, Eleanor insisted on a full preparation session. She'd been watching makeup tutorials online, learning techniques I'd never even heard of. Contouring, highlighting, color correcting. She approached it with the enthusiasm of someone learning a new art form, and honestly, her excitement was contagious. Okay, so today we're going to try something different with your eyes, she said, laying out what looked like 50 different brushes on the bathroom counter. I learned this technique that's going to make them look more feminine and open. I sat in the chair she'd set up, and for the next hour, she worked on my face with the focus of a surgeon. Every few minutes, she'd step back, tilt her head, and assess her work before diving back in. When she finally turned me toward the mirror, I barely recognized myself. She'd somehow softened all my features, made my eyes look bigger, my cheekbones more defined. I looked like a completely different person. I looked like Michelle. What do you think? She asked, a hopeful smile on her face. I think you're a magician, I said, genuinely amazed. She laughed and kissed the top of my head. You're easy to work with. You have good bone structure. Now, let's pick out your outfit. We'd been slowly building what Eleanor jokingly called my Michelle wardrobe. Nothing too expensive or fancy, just pieces that made me feel comfortable and confident. For dinner, we settled on a burgundy blouse with a black skirt that hit just below my knees. Simple, elegant, and most importantly, something I felt good in. By the time we were ready to leave, my nerves were shot. I must have checked my appearance in the mirror 20 times, adjusting the wig, fixing my lipstick, smoothing down the skirt. Eleanor finally grabbed my hand and pulled me away from the mirror. You look beautiful, she said firmly. Stop worrying. Tonight is about us having a nice dinner. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. The drive to the restaurant felt both too long and too short. My mind was racing with worst-case scenarios. What if the hostess refused to seat us? What if other diners stared? What if someone said something cruel? Eleanor must have sensed my anxiety because she reached over and squeezed my hand. "Breathe," she reminded me. "You've got this." The restaurant was charming, with dim lighting and candles on every table. When we walked in, the hostess greeted us with a warm smile. "Good evening, ladies. Do you have a reservation?" Ladies. She'd called us ladies. Something about that simple word made my shoulders relax just a bit. "Yes," under Eleanor, my partner replied smoothly. "Right this way." We were seated at a cozy corner table, and as I sat down, I took a moment to observe the other diners. Couples, families, groups of friends. Everyone was absorbed in their own conversations, their own worlds. No one was paying attention to us. No one cared. The realization was both humbling and liberating. Dinner was wonderful. We ordered wine, shared an appetizer, and talked about everything and nothing. Eleanor told me about a project she was working on at her job. I told her about the ridiculous email chain that had been going around my office all week. We laughed, we ate, we existed as two people enjoying a meal together. And for 2 glorious hours, I forgot to be afraid. It was when we were waiting for dessert that I noticed the woman at the table next to ours. She was probably in her 60s, well-dressed, with silver hair styled in an elegant updo. I'd caught her glancing over a few times during dinner, and each time, my stomach had clenched. Was she staring? Did she know? But when our eyes met, she simply smiled and went back to her meal. A few minutes later, as she was leaving, she stopped by our table. My heart jumped into my throat. Here it comes, I thought. The confrontation, the comment, the judgment. But instead, she leaned down slightly and said, "I just wanted to tell you both that you make a lovely couple. It's so nice to see two people clearly in love. Have a wonderful evening." And then she was gone, leaving me sitting there with tears pricking at my eyes. Eleanor reached across the table and took my hand, her own eyes glistening. "See," she whispered, "the world isn't as scary as you think." That night was a milestone. It proved to me that I could exist in public spaces as Michelle and not only survive but actually enjoy myself. More importantly, it showed me that kindness existed in unexpected places. That woman didn't have to stop at our table. She could have kept her thoughts to herself. But she chose to offer a moment of validation, and it meant more to me than she could ever know. After that dinner, we became more adventurous. We went to movies, walked through parks, browsed bookstores. Each outing built my confidence a little more. I started to notice something interesting. When I was presenting as Michelle, I carried myself differently. I was more relaxed, more present, more authentically me. It was like I'd been walking around with tension in my shoulders my whole life, and suddenly, it was gone. But of course, life has a way of testing you right when you start getting comfortable. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Eleanor and I had decided to go to a farmer's market about 30 minutes from home. It was a beautiful autumn day, the kind where the air is crisp and the leaves are turning brilliant shades of orange and gold. I dressed casually, jeans and a flowing tunic top, with my wig styled in loose waves. We were walking hand in hand, browsing stalls of fresh produce and handmade crafts, when I heard someone call out, "Michael? Michael Henderson." Everything inside me froze. I knew that voice. I turned slowly and saw Greg Patterson, a guy I'd gone to high school with. We hadn't been close friends, but we'd been in the same social circle. He played football. I'd been on the math team. We'd lost touch after graduation, but I'd see him around town occasionally. And now here he was, standing 5 feet away, looking confused. "I thought that was you," he said, walking closer. Then his eyes took in my appearance, the full picture, and his expression shifted from confusion to something harder to read.
Wow.
"I almost didn't recognize you. You look different." My mouth went dry. Eleanor squeezed my hand, a silent reminder that she was there. I forced myself to speak. "Hey, Greg." "Yeah, it's me. This is Eleanor, my partner." Greg's eyes flicked between us, and I could practically see him trying to process what he's seeing.
Right. Cool.
So you're, He gestured vaguely at my outfit, clearly unsure how to finish that sentence. I'm just living my life, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. How have you been? There was an awkward pause, the kind that stretches out and feels like it lasts forever. Greg shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. Yeah, man. Good. I'm good. I just didn't expect to see you like this. Eleanor jumped in, her voice friendly but firm. It's nice to meet you, Greg. Michael's told me about his high school days. You played football, right? The conversation shifted, became more normal, but the tension was still there, humming underneath. After a few more minutes of forced small talk, Greg excused himself, mumbling something about needing to find his wife. As he walked away, I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Are you okay? Eleanor asked immediately. I don't know, I admitted. That was unexpected. You handled it well, she said, rubbing my back. You didn't hide. You didn't apologize. You just were yourself. She was right, but it didn't stop my heart from racing or my mind from spiraling. What if Greg told people? What if word got back to my coworkers? What if this was the beginning of my two worlds colliding in a way I wasn't ready for? We left the farmer's market shortly after, and the drive home was quiet. Eleanor let me sit with my thoughts, not pushing me to talk until I was ready. When we got home, I changed out of Michelle's clothes and sat on the couch, staring at nothing. Eleanor sat next to me, close but not crowding. Talk to me. I knew this could happen, I said slowly. I knew that eventually, someone from my regular life would see me as Michelle. I just thought I'd have more time to prepare. And now I keep thinking, what if he tells everyone? What if people at work find out? What if? Michael, Eleanor interrupted gently. What if they do find out? What's the worst that could happen? I looked at her like she'd lost her mind. I could lose my job. I could lose my friends. People could treat me differently. They might, she acknowledged. But they also might surprise you. Like that woman at the restaurant. Like all the people who've passed us on the street and haven't given us a second glance. Yes, there are going to be people who don't understand. There are going to be people who judge. But hiding forever isn't sustainable. You've been so much happier these past few months. Do you really want to go back to the way things were? I knew she was right. Going back to hiding felt impossible now that I'd tasted freedom. But the fear was still there, real and heavy. I'm just scared, I admitted. I know, she said, pulling me into a hug. But you're also brave. Braver than you give yourself credit for. The next few days were anxious ones. I kept expecting my phone to ring, for someone from work to call and confront me. But nothing happened. Life continued as normal. Greg hadn't blown up my world after all. Maybe he decided it wasn't his business. Maybe his wife had talked sense into him. Or maybe, just maybe, he didn't care as much as I thought he would. A week later, something unexpected happened. I was at the grocery store, presenting as Michael in my regular work clothes, when I ran into Greg again. This time, he was alone, pushing a cart through the produce section. When he saw me, he hesitated for a moment, then walked over. Hey, Michael, he said, and this time his tone was different. Less awkward, more genuine. Listen, about last week. I wanted to apologize. I think I came off like a jerk and that wasn't cool. I was so surprised I almost dropped the tomatoes I was holding.
Oh.
Okay. Thanks. My wife kind of chewed me out after, he continued with a sheepish smile. She said I was being closed-minded and that I should be happy you're living authentically or whatever. And she's right. We're all just trying to get through life, you know?
So yeah, I'm sorry.
And I hope you and Eleanor are happy. It wasn't a grand declaration of support, but it was something. An acknowledgement. An apology. A small bridge built over what could have been a burned connection. Thanks, Greg, I said, meaning it. That actually means a lot. He nodded. We exchanged a few more pleasantries, and then he went on his way. I stood there in the produce section, holding my tomatoes, feeling like maybe the world was a little less scary than I'd thought. That encounter taught me something important. People can surprise you. They can grow. They can change their minds. Not everyone will, of course, but some will. And sometimes that's enough. As winter approached, Eleanor started talking about the holidays. Specifically, about me meeting her family. She told her parents and her sister about me, about us, and apparently, they were eager to meet me. But there was a complication. Did they know about Michelle? And if not, was I going to show up as Michael and pretend that whole part of me didn't exist? I want to tell them, Eleanor said one evening as we were making dinner together. I want them to know all of you. But I also don't want to pressure you. This is your journey. You get to decide who knows and when. I thought about it for a long time. Meeting someone's family is always nerve-wracking, but meeting them while hiding a fundamental part of yourself? That felt dishonest. And after everything Eleanor had done for me, after all the acceptance and love she'd shown, I didn't want to start our relationship with her family on a foundation of secrets. Tell them, I said finally. Tell them everything. If they can't accept it, then I'd rather know now. Eleanor smiled and kissed me. They're going to love you. I promise. She called her parents that night, and I listened from the other room as she explained. I couldn't hear exactly what she was saying, but I caught phrases here and there. Really important to him. Part of who he is. I hope you can be supportive. The conversation lasted about 20 minutes, and when she came back, she was smiling. So, I asked nervously. They want to meet both of you, she said. Michael and Michelle. They said it would be nice to know all sides of the person their daughter loves. I felt tears spring to my eyes for what felt like the 100th time since meeting Eleanor. Really? Really? My mom's exact words were, if he makes you happy, then we're happy. And if she makes him happy, then we're happy. So, I think you're good. Meeting Eleanor's family turned out to be one of the most nerve-wracking and ultimately rewarding experiences of my life. We drove to their home 3 weeks before Christmas, and I decided to present as Michael for the initial meeting. Eleanor's dad, Robert, was a retired teacher with a firm handshake and kind eyes. Her mom, Patricia, was a petite woman with Eleanor's same warm energy. And her sister, Lauren, was younger by 3 years and had a mischievous smile that reminded me of my own sister's. The first hour was typical meeting the family stuff. They asked about my job, my hobbies, how Eleanor and I met. I was nervous but tried to be myself. Well, part of myself. Over dinner, Patricia brought it up in the most straightforward way possible. So Eleanor tells us you also go by Michelle sometimes, she said conversationally, like she was commenting on the weather. I think that's wonderful that you're exploring that part of yourself. I nearly choked on my water. Eleanor shot me an encouraging look. Yes, I managed. It's something I've been working through for a long time. Eleanor's been incredibly supportive. Good, Patricia said firmly. Everyone deserves to be themselves. Lord knows life's too short to spend it pretending. Robert nodded in agreement. We just want Eleanor to be happy. And from what we've seen tonight, you make her very happy. That's what matters to us. Lauren grinned. Plus, I've always wanted a sister I could share clothes with. Eleanor's style is so boring. Hey, Eleanor protested, but she was laughing. Just like that, the tension dissolved. We spent the rest of the evening talking and laughing, and it felt like I'd been welcomed into something special. Before we left, Patricia pulled me aside. Next time you visit, you should come as Michelle, she said quietly. I'd like to meet her too. All of you. That invitation meant more to me than I could express. So 2 weeks later, when we went back for Christmas Eve dinner, I showed up as Michelle. Eleanor had helped me pick out a festive red dress, and I'd spent extra time on my makeup. When Patricia opened the door and saw me, her face lit up. There she is, she said, pulling me into a hug. You look beautiful. Come in, come in. It's freezing out there. That Christmas Eve was magical. We ate too much food, played board games, and exchanged gifts. Lauren had even gotten me a necklace, a delicate silver chain with a small pendant. For Michelle, she'd said with a wink. I wore it the rest of the night, touching it occasionally to remind myself this was real. As the new year approached, I found myself reflecting on how much my life had changed in such a short time. A year ago, I'd been living in secret, stealing moments to be myself when no one was watching. Now I had a partner who loved me, a second family who accepted me, and a growing sense of peace with who I was. But there was still one mountain I hadn't climbed. My own family. My sisters and I had drifted apart over the years, busy with our own lives. But we still got together occasionally. They knew I was seeing someone, but they didn't know about Michelle. And I wasn't sure I was ready to tell them. Eleanor, as usual, had thoughts on this. "You don't have to tell them if you're not ready," she said. "But I also think you might be surprised. They're your sisters. They've known you your whole life. Maybe they'll understand better than you think." I wanted to believe her, but my sisters and I had never been particularly close emotionally. We were family, but we didn't talk about deep personal things. The idea of sitting them down and explaining Michelle felt overwhelming. The decision was made for me in February. My oldest sister, Jennifer, called to say she was organizing a family reunion for the summer. Everyone would be there, kids included. She wanted to know if I'd bring Eleanor. "Of course," I said. "She'd love to come." "Great," Jennifer said. Then, after a pause, "Is there anything we should know? You sound different lately. Happier." It was such a small opening, but something about the way she said it made me think maybe, just maybe, I could trust her with the truth. So I took a breath and jumped. "Actually, there is something I need to tell you. All of you. Can we maybe get together before the summer? Just the siblings." There was surprise in her voice, but also concern. "Of course. Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I assured her. "Better than fine, actually. I just have something important to share." We arranged to meet at Jennifer's house the following weekend. All 4 of my sisters would be there. Eleanor offered to come with me for support, but I felt like this was something I needed to do alone. This was my family, my past, my truth to share. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. I rehearsed what I was going to say over and over, but no version sounded right. How do you explain to your sisters that the quiet little brother they grew up with has been hiding a huge part of himself for decades? When I arrived at Jennifer's house, everyone was already there. Rebecca, Amanda, and Sarah were in the living room, coffee cups in hand, looking curious and a bit concerned. Jennifer ushered me in, and we all sat down. "Okay, Michael," Jennifer said gently. "You've got us worried. What's going on?" I looked at their faces, these women I'd grown up with, and suddenly all my prepared words disappeared. So I just started talking, letting it flow naturally. "Do you remember when we were kids and I used to watch you guys get ready for things? Dances, weddings, parties? I was always fascinated by it. The clothes, the makeup, all of it. I thought it was just curiosity, but it was more than that. I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to experience it myself." They were quiet, listening, so I kept going. "When I was a teenager, after my room moved to the attic, I started trying on Mom's old clothes. The ones she had stored up there. It made me feel like myself in a way nothing else did.
But I was terrified, so I hid it.
I hid it through high school, through college, through my marriage to Catherine. I've spent most of my life hiding this part of myself because I didn't know how to talk about it or what it meant." Sarah's eyes were wide. "You wore Mom's clothes?" I nodded. "I did. And now, with Eleanor's help, I've been exploring that part of myself more openly. I dress in feminine clothes sometimes. I go by Michelle. It's not something I do all the time, but it's a part of who I am. And I wanted you to know because you're my family, and I'm tired of hiding." The silence that followed felt like it lasted an hour, though it was probably only seconds. Then Amanda, who'd always been the most practical of us, spoke up. "So, you're saying you're transgender?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe? I'm still figuring it out. All I know is that when I present as feminine, I feel more like myself. Labels are complicated, but Michelle is real. She's part of me." Rebecca leaned forward. "And Eleanor knows about this? She's supportive." "She's been amazing," I said, feeling a rush of gratitude. "She's the one who encouraged me to stop hiding. She's helped me with everything." Jennifer was quiet for a moment, then stood up and walked over to me. I braced myself for rejection, but instead, she pulled me into a tight hug. "I'm sorry you felt like you had to hide this from us," she said, her voice thick with emotion. That must have been so lonely. One by one, my other sisters joined the hug until I was surrounded by them. Sarah was crying. Amanda kept saying, "It's okay, it's okay." Rebecca held my hand tight. When we finally pulled apart, Jennifer wiped her eyes and said, "So, when do we get to meet Michelle?" I let out a laugh that was half sob. "Really? You want to meet her?" "Of course we do," Amanda said. "You're our brother. Or sister. Or whatever you want to be called. We love you. And if Michelle is part of you, then we want to know her." Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "And I have so many questions about your skincare routine because your complexion looks amazing in your photos with Eleanor." I laughed through my tears. "Eleanor's been teaching me." "Well, she's doing a great job," Sarah said. "We need to swap tips." The rest of that afternoon was spent talking, really talking, in a way we hadn't in years. I showed them pictures of Michelle, told them about my outings with Eleanor, answered their questions as honestly as I could. It felt like a weight I'd been carrying for decades had finally been lifted. Before I left, Jennifer pulled me aside. "Thank you for trusting us with this. I know it couldn't have been easy. And I want you to know, when you come to the family reunion this summer, you're welcome to come as whoever feels right. Michael, Michelle, or somewhere in between. We just want you there." That conversation with my sisters changed everything. Suddenly, I had my whole family on my side. Eleanor's family, and now my own. The circle of acceptance was growing, and with it, my confidence. Spring came, and with it more adventures. Eleanor and I went on a weekend trip to a bed and breakfast in Vermont. I packed clothes for both Michael and Michelle, unsure which version of me I'd want to present. In the end, I spent most of the trip as Michelle, and it felt natural and right. The owners of the bed and breakfast were a lovely older couple who treated us like any other guests. We hiked through mountains, explored small towns, and spent evenings by the fireplace talking about the future. "Have you thought about what you want long-term?" Eleanor asked one night. "With Michelle, I mean." "I think about it all the time," I admitted. "Part of me wonders if I'd be happier living as Michelle full-time. But another part of me feels like I'm both. Like Michael and Michelle are two sides of the same person, and I need both to feel complete." "That makes sense," Eleanor said. "You don't have to choose. You can be fluid. You can be whatever feels right on any given day." "Is that okay with you?" I asked. "The not knowing? The fluidity?" She smiled and took my hand. "Michael, Michelle, whoever you are in any moment, I love you. I fell in love with your heart, your kindness, your humor. The packaging might change, but the person inside stays the same. And that's the person I want to spend my life with." Something about the way she said "spend my life with" made my heart skip. We'd been together for over a year now, but we hadn't talked much about the future in concrete terms. Marriage, kids, growing old together. Those were conversations I'd been too afraid to start, worried that my complexity might be too much for anyone to sign up for permanently. But Eleanor wasn't just anyone. She'd proven that over and over. "I want that too," I said quietly. "Spending my life with you. However that looks." She leaned over and kissed me, soft and sweet. "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere." That summer, the family reunion happened as planned. I decided to come as Michael for most of it, since there would be kids and extended family who didn't know my whole story. But I brought Michelle clothes, and on the second day, I changed into a casual sundress and joined everyone by the lake. My nieces and nephews didn't even blink. Kids are amazing that way. One of my nephews, Jennifer's oldest boy, just said, "Cool dress, Uncle Michael," and went back to building his sandcastle. The adults were a bit more obviously trying to be supportive, but no one made a big deal out of it. It was just accepted as part of who I was. At one point, my mother, who'd been quiet about the whole thing, pulled me aside. She was in her 70s now, a bit slower, but still sharp as ever. "I wish I'd known," she said softly. "When you were young, trying on my clothes in the attic. I wish you'd felt like you could tell me." "I didn't know how," I said honestly. "I didn't even understand it myself." She nodded, her eyes misty. "I want you to have them. The clothes. The ones from the attic. I know we got rid of most of them years ago, but I kept a few pieces. I'd like Michelle to have them. Something from your mother. I hugged her tight, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. That simple gesture, that acknowledgement, meant everything. As fall approached again, Eleanor and I started talking more seriously about our future. We'd been looking at houses, places with more space, maybe a little garden. One evening, as we were washing dishes after dinner, Eleanor turned to me with a nervous smile. "I have something I want to ask you," she said. My heart started pounding. "Okay." She dried her hands and then, to my complete shock, got down on one knee right there in our kitchen. "Michael, Michelle, whoever you are in this moment and every moment going forward, you're the love of my life. You've taught me so much about courage and authenticity and what it means to really see someone. I want to spend the rest of my life seeing you, all of you, and loving every version. Will you marry me?" I was crying before she even finished.
Yes.
Yes, of course, yes. She slipped a simple silver band on my finger, and we held each other in that tiny kitchen, both of us laughing and crying at the same time. Planning a wedding when you're not sure which version of yourself you want to be at the altar is complicated, but we figured it out. We decided on a small ceremony, just close family and friends, in Eleanor's parents' backyard. And I decided to be both. I'd start the ceremony as Michael, in a suit, and halfway through, Eleanor and I would have a costume change moment. She'd change into a different dress, and I'd change into one too. It was unconventional, but it felt right. It felt like us. The wedding day was perfect. Sunny, but not too hot, with a gentle breeze that made the flowers Eleanor's mom had planted sway slightly. When it came time for the costume change, my sisters helped me into my dress, a beautiful champagne-colored gown that Eleanor had helped me pick out months before. When I walked back out to rejoin the ceremony, now as Michelle, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. The officiant, a friend of Eleanor's who'd been incredibly supportive throughout the whole process, smiled and said, "And now we continue this celebration of love in all its forms." When Eleanor and I exchanged our vows, I promised to always be honest, to always be myself, and to always choose love over fear. She promised to see me, to support me, and to never let me hide. We sealed those promises with a kiss, and everyone cheered. At the reception, my sister Sarah gave a toast. "I've known Michael my whole life," she said, "and I've known Michelle for a much shorter time. But what I've realized is they're both the same person, just different expressions of the same beautiful soul. And watching my sibling find someone who loves every part of them has been one of the greatest joys of my life." To Michael, to Michelle, and to Eleanor, the woman brave enough to love them both. Everyone raised their glasses, and I felt a completeness I'd never experienced before. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't pretending. I was just me, surrounded by people who loved me, married to the woman of my dreams. That night, as Eleanor and I slow danced under string lights in her parents' backyard, she whispered, "How does it feel?" "Like coming home," I whispered back. "Like I've finally found where I belong." And I had. Not in a place, but in a state of being. In authenticity. In acceptance. In love. Life after the wedding settled into a comfortable rhythm. We bought that house we've been looking at, a charming 2-bedroom with a big backyard and plenty of closet space for both Michael's and Michelle's wardrobes. I continued working at the accounting firm as Michael, and gradually, I started being more open about Michelle with select colleagues. Not everyone understood, but most people were kind. Eleanor's career took off, and she started her own consulting business. She'd always been brilliant, but watching her step into her power was incredible. We supported each other through everything. Career challenges, family stuff, bad days and good days. And through it all, Michelle became less of a secret and more just a part of life. Some days I'd come home from work and stay as Michael all evening. Other days I'd change immediately. We stopped thinking of it as this big, significant thing and just let it be natural. About 2 years after our wedding, we were at the grocery store, me presenting as Michelle, when we ran into a young person, probably early 20s, who'd been staring at us in the produce section. Eleanor noticed and tensed up, But then the person walked over, looking nervous. "I'm sorry to bother you," they said quietly. "But I just wanted to say thank you. I've seen you two around town before, and seeing you just existing and being happy gives me hope. I'm still figuring out my own stuff, and it helps to see people living authentically." Eleanor and I exchanged a look, both of us touched. "You're not bothering us at all," I said gently. "And I'm glad we could help in some small way. Keep being yourself. It's worth it." They smiled, thanked us again, and walked away. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "You're making a difference," she said. "Just by existing. Just by being brave enough to be yourself." I'd never thought about it that way. I'd been so focused on my own journey, my own fears and triumphs, that I hadn't considered that simply living openly might impact others. But that encounter stuck with me. It reminded me that visibility matters, that representation matters, that someone else's courage can light the way for others still finding their path. These days, life is good. It's not perfect. There are still moments of difficulty, still people who don't understand, still days when I struggle with my own identity. But I have Eleanor. I have my family. I have friends who see me and love me. And I have myself, finally, after so many years of hiding. Looking back at that scared 7-year-old standing in his sister's room, or that lonely teenager in the attic, or that man locked in a bathroom trying on his wife's clothes, I wish I could tell them it gets better. I wish I could tell them that one day, they'll find someone who not only accepts them but celebrates them. Someone who'll help them dress up not because they have to, but because they want to. Because it brings them joy. Because it makes them feel whole. Eleanor didn't force me to be Michelle. She gave me permission to explore that part of myself without shame or fear. She showed me that love doesn't require you to be one thing or fit into one box. Love sees you in all your complexity and says, yes, all of it. I choose all of it. And that's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me. The gift of being fully, completely, authentically myself. So when people ask me about my story, about how I came to live this way, I tell them about Eleanor. I tell them about the day she found those clothes in the garage and didn't run. I tell them about the concert, the dinner, the family meetings, the wedding. I tell them about every moment of fear and every moment of joy. But mostly I tell them this: you deserve to be yourself. Whoever that is. However complicated or simple or strange or beautiful that might be. You deserve to be seen and loved for exactly who you are. And there are people out there who will see you and love you if you're brave enough to let them in. It took me 40 years to learn that lesson. 40 years of hiding and shame and fear. But I learned it eventually. And now, I get to live it every single day. So yes, she made me dress up. But really, she set me free. And that has made all the difference.